Welcome to another video. This week has been a solid week for the most part. I hit some juicy PRs, 270, 595 for a double on squat, and 170, 375 for a double on bench, along with a nice 765, I think that's like 340-ish single. Unfortunately, I got super out of position on the second rep. The bar kind of rolled away from me. The floors were a little bit uneven, but I pushed it out. I'm not making excuses. I pushed it out with my legs and kind of just got away from the bar, and I couldn't finish. I couldn't even get it off the ground, so I didn't want to bother wasting energy and try and grind that out. So I just moved on. Additionally, a couple of volume PRs, but I think the best part of the week is just the positivity and confidence that I felt when approaching my training this week. I felt motivated and driven to push harder and continue to work through all this volume and fatigue. I've got a lot of work still to do, but I'm definitely closing in on some of my short-term goals, and I'm really excited to keep working towards them. So on that note, let's get into the topic of this week's video, which is long-term progression. I think that a lot of people these days are focused on the short term. To be honest, it's hard not to. We live in a world that is fast and loose. We all live lives that are... We live by that kind of adage of live fast and die young. We're not really considerate of tomorrow. We only think about today. And I'm not going to say that I transcend that. I spent much of the past few years of my life believing that my status as a powerlifter and as a person was really defined by everything that I had now. And that, ultimately if I didn't achieve success in the short term, the long term became irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you can do in 5 or 10 years. It only matters what you can do now. And I felt bad, I felt weak, I felt downtrodden because what I had wasn't representative of how I believed, what I believed of my potential and of my goals and my work ethic and drive to achieve them. And I think this really applied across my life, and that perspective limited me in a lot of ways. I didn't feel confident, and I felt that other people were more because they had achieved things immediately. We all kind of look up to that Mark Zuckerberg type figure, and we kind of define ourselves by what we've achieved by those age marks. We don't necessarily think of the fact that we all just work at different speeds. We kind of get what we want, and maybe it takes us a little bit longer to achieve our goals, but there's nothing wrong with that. We're still, as long as you're working towards them, it's hard to say that you're not putting in the effort and you're not putting in the time, but it will come. And I think my mindset really changed by observing my growth in the long term. And by the long term, I mean 3 years. I really haven't been powerlifting that long in the scheme of things, so 3 years is a good measurement for myself. So since 2016 Raw Nationals, I've added about 500 pounds to my competition total, and probably closer to about 650 pounds based on my current gym total. But during that time period, you pick any day during that time period, and you probably would have met a frustrated and confused Alex, a man that wasn't satisfied with his progress or his status as a powerlifter. That definitely doesn't mean that I'm satisfied with where I'm at now with my progress or my status. I'm certainly not. And I had a conversation the other day along the lines of I could win IPF Worlds today and I still wouldn't be satisfied. I still wouldn't think that I was enough in powerlifting. And it really made me wonder if all of this is worthwhile and if I was actually really working towards something that would give me gratification or be enjoyable for me. And then I really thought about how far I've come. And the enjoyment that I've had along the journey. A lot of those steps along the way, I've made a lot of great friends and had a lot of amazing experiences that I wouldn't have been able to experience without powerlifting. And I'm happy that this maturity has allowed me to realize that the happiness is truly found in the journey and not the destination. But I feel like I'm really one of the few that believes that. I see so many people that are hungry, starving for progress, to the point that they'll do literally anything to get to where they want to go. And don't get me wrong, I am really hungry. I want my goals so badly, and I do so much in order to get there. I sacrifice so much in order to get there. But I understand my limitations, and I know that I can't progress 100 pounds this week, but maybe I can this year. But I think a lot of other people don't realize this. They look at the people that are in the industry, they look at people that are succeeding in powerlifting, and they think of one of two things. They take excessive doses of performance-enhancing drugs and train in a way that really just supersedes what is required. They work so hard, but in many ways they're not putting in the right effort to the right intangibles to ensure that they're progressing. And to these people I say, keep it simple. Powerlifting may not be a mainstream sport, but it is a sport. And I'm sure if LeBron or JJ Watt or Roger Federer or any other athlete came into powerlifting, they would approach it with the same principles that they approach their current training. Most of their training is going to be around the sport and the activity that they're doing. And maybe they do drills to focus on specific sides of it, but you're not going to tell me that Roger Federer doesn't still play, some games of tennis before he goes out and plays a match. His practice is going to look a lot like how he plays. They might break it down and focus on some specific elements, but surely that isn't the same as breaking up your training sessions to focus on different lifts. Training is honestly quite simple. It's probably one of the easiest parts of being a successful athlete. Consistency, discipline, and structure combined present a model for long-term progression. We repeat this model, we change it a little bit, depending on where you're at in your training, and we just keep pushing. We keep pushing one thing or another, whether it's the volume or the intensity. We're changing those factors to make training different depending on what we require at that point. We increase the volume, we load the load or the RPE to challenge ourselves in new ways and chase new goals. But there really is no need to make it complicated, and there's certainly no need to be greedy. I think one of the biggest things people don't realize in training is that you need to leave a little bit on your plate. You don't need to push until everything's out. Leave a little bit for later. Save some energy, because every little extra rep that you do over what you need to be doing, you're really just wasting energy and taking that from the next day. Think of it as being hungover. If you're hungover, it's really difficult to do a lot of the things that you want to do. And that's because you just spent so much time the night before doing stuff that it was making it more difficult to be a person the next day. Going heavy all the time or doing variations that make the movement significantly easier simply for the purpose of lifting more weight in that session won't help you. In fact, it's probably hurting you, pushing back your recovery, preventing you from training with enough volume, and significantly increasing your risk of injury. And so quite frankly, it's a waste of your time. Handling 150% of your max through 10% of your range of motion won't make handling 100% of your max through 100% of your range of motion any easier. You're just pushing the problem further away and placating your foray of Instagram followers with instant gratification. But ultimately, you're just cheating yourself. I would definitely say that I've experienced this. When I was at USF, I trained heavy all the time, and I constantly felt under-recovered and sore. And I really just couldn't accept that 4 or 5 wasn't there that day. And I should just drop the load to complete my sets and do the volume that I needed to do, Doing 6 sets of 5 is much more important than hitting that one single that I was supposed to do on that day. That one single builds the confidence, but that 6 sets of 5 actually builds the strength. And if you're just doing singles all the time, then what's the point? I wouldn't accept that 4 or 5 wasn't there on days when I wanted to hit it. I skipped sets, I skipped reps, I skipped meals, I skipped sleep, I skipped sessions, until I didn't. One day I decided that if I really wanted to achieve my goals, if this really mattered to me, and my progress in this sport was important in my life, then I would do the work. I wouldn't just act like I was doing it. I wouldn't just say that I was hustling and grinding. I would just do it. And I think that's something that we've lost. People don't just do the work that they're supposed to do. They tell everyone that they're doing so much and they're working so hard and they're sacrificing so much. But are you? Are you really? In a generation of grinders, be the one that's actually grinding. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.